All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. We will get started in just a moment here, but I just have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your camera and microphone are off so that the panelists cannot see or hear you. This is just one of the many different sessions that's happening, so be sure to check out the full schedule at strivescan.com/Virginia. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available within about a week at the same website. So that's strivescan.com/Virginia. So I will now turn it over to our presenters.
Welcome. You have made it to the last session. I know you saved the best for last. So good evening. Welcome to our session about IB, AP, and dual enrollment and how these advanced classes are going to help you in college admissions and undergraduate learning. My name is Joy McGrath. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at Randolph College, located in the historic district of Lynchburg, Virginia. Randolph has a diverse enrollment of about 600 students from 31 states and about 22 countries. We offer 30 majors and 43 minors. Randolph prides itself on you being your own individual, so our motto is be an original. Susie?
All right, thanks, Joy. Hi, everyone. My name is Susie Swartz, and I am the Senior Assistant Director of Freshman Admission at Western Carolina University. We are located in beautiful Cullowhee, North Carolina, right in the mountains, and you can see our campus right behind me here. We're right where the Blue Ridge and Smoky Mountains meet. We are a four-year mid-sized public institution and the westernmost school in the University of North Carolina system.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a great evening. My name is Katie Reynolds. I'm an Associate Director at Stevenson University. We're located in Owings Mills, Maryland, which is in Baltimore County, Maryland. So depending on where you're coming from in Virginia, we could be an hour away, 2-3 hours away, but ultimately not that far. We have just under 4,000 full-time undergraduate students. So we're kind of a medium-sized institution, big enough where you get to meet lots of new people from lots of different backgrounds, but small enough where you get lots of personal attention. We have over 90 academic programs to choose from, and we're very focused on helping you getting career preparation through internships, research, or capstone courses.
Awesome. So I'll take it from here. My name is Melissa Stoker. I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Admission at Towson University. So we're actually very close to Stevenson. We're only about 20 minutes from their campus. So we're actually right outside of Baltimore City in Maryland. So it's about 8 miles from the Inner Harbor if you've been to that kind of touristy section of Baltimore City, but actually in the small city of Towson itself. So we are the fastest growing university in Maryland with enrolling more and more students each year. And we are also we have about 23,000 students, second largest in Maryland, largest in the Baltimore area. And it's really nice because even though we are a large institution, your average class size is only about 24 students. So you still really get to know your professors and have those discussions in classes. And we do have over 60 undergraduate majors, so all kinds of things to choose from. Some of the most popular majors are going to be things like biology, business, nursing, and education. So we'll go ahead and go forward, and then I will let Katie take it over from here.
All right. Hello again. I'm going to get us started talking about dual enrollment specifically, and then we'll continue on with talking about AP and IB. If you hear a dog in the background, that's my neighbor's dog. Just want to acknowledge that. I think they're right outside my window barking, but that's working from home. So I'm basically going to cover the questions on the slide and hopefully give you guys some helpful information. Please put questions into the chat. We have designated time at the end to answer your questions, so we won't necessarily answer them live while we're talking, but we do have specific time at the end. So please put that in the chat if you have any questions or need us to clarify anything. So some of the biggest questions, specifically the first one, are your dual enrollment grades factored into your GPA? And if you're not familiar, dual enrollment means you're actually taking college level classes. Sometimes that could be at your high school. So a college professor from a local community college or another four-year institution comes to your high school and teaches classes and you can earn college credit. Or in some high schools, you actually go to the community college or other institutions. So Typically, if your dual enrollment grades are actually listed on your high school transcript, then yes, those grades would be factored into your high school GPA because your high school is actually including them as part of your overall high school transcript. It's important for you to figure out what your high school's policy is. Take a look at your unofficial transcript, ask your school counselor, are my dual enrollment classes listed on my transcript, or do I actually have to request a specific transcript from the community college or the other four-year institution, and to make sure that the colleges I'm applying to have that information. Sometimes in those cases, if it's on a separate transcript, it may not be factored as part of your high school GPA, but we're always looking at the rigor. So colleges are always paying attention to the fact that you are taking these higher level courses, that you're actually taking college level courses, and it's a different level of rigor, and that you're really taking the opportunity to challenge yourself. So that kind of goes into the second question, am I required to disclose my dual enrollment classes? I don't really see any instance where it would benefit you to not share that information. Because again, it's showing that you're taking rigorous courses, that you're taking the opportunity to challenge yourself, and not just challenge yourself, but actually take college level courses. So that's important to show as part of your application, that you are taking that step. And then if you decide to enroll at the institution you've been admitted to, then they'll know in advance that you could potentially be earning credit, which could potentially impact the classes you're taking. And you'll learn a little bit more towards the end about the benefits, but there's always a benefit to listing this. So you always should make sure you're listing your dual enrollment courses. Again, check to see, is it listed on my transcript, or do I have to send that information in separately? If you're applying to schools on the Common Application, which is a large application platform, you can actually list all the courses you're taking as part of that. It could be something that you make sure your counselor lists in your letter of recommendation, but make sure the schools that you're applying to are aware that you're taking these classes. The third question is, I think, kind of becoming one of the most popular, especially some of you may be in these associate programs where you're actually earning your high school transcript and your associate's degree at the same time, or maybe you're earning a significant amount of college credit. At almost all schools, now I can only speak for my institution and the institutions I've worked at. It's important to know none of us speak for every college in the country. It's always good practice to ask the schools you're applying to individually what their practices are. But most schools that I'm aware of, you're still considered a freshman applicant, even if you are earning that associate's degree, because you haven't graduated high school yet. So that's kind of the determining factor. You haven't graduated high school yet. Yes, you're bringing in a significant number of college credits, but you're still a high school student. So most colleges, you're still applying as a freshman applicant. Now, if you enroll at that institution, you may get some upperclassmen benefits, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later, but for most schools, you're still going to be technically applying as a freshman student. So it's good to know that. And then one of the big ones, what's the benefit of dual enrollment versus AP or IB? We get this question a lot, which is better, which do colleges like more? The biggest thing here is to think about yourself as a student. You always have to think of yourself first and what's going to be best for you. You know how you are as a learner, what type of environment you're best in, you know the teachers at your school, you know upperclassmen at your high school, so you can get a sense of what classes are like. So always think about yourself and what's going to be best for you and the style of your learning. And you also have to consider your schedule as well when thinking about dual enrollment, AP, IB. You know, we know that you can't always fit in everything. Some schools are very limited in what they offer, or if you have to actually leave the building to go take these dual enrollment classes, that may not work for you. And we know that. So we know there's a lot of factors that go in to whether you're taking dual enrollment, AP, or IB. I like dual enrollment personally because I think it's a great preview into what college classes are like. Because again, you're either learning from a college professor or you're physically at a college building. So it's a great way to get understanding of the expectations of college level work, because it is a different type of work. It's a different workload, it's different expectations, it's different timeline. So I think dual enrollment is great because it does really give you a great preview into what the college experience would be like, even if you just take one dual enrollment class. It's a good way to get an understanding of what college would be like. But on the next slide, we're going to talk to you about the benefits of AP and IB as well. So again, figure out what works best for you as a student. And then the last one is the big one. If you're putting in all this work, how can you get rewarded for it? Aside from getting admitted into schools, how can you actually earn credit? Again, this is an important one to definitely ask all the schools you're applying to individually, because each school is going to have different policies. So make sure you check in with them. The two biggest things to ask about are, what is the GPA requirement that that school requires for you to bring in credit? And do they have any credit caps? Meaning, do they limit the number of credits you can transfer in? So those are kind of the two biggest questions that you can ask. So for example, at Stevenson University, you need to have a C or better. So a C or better is our grade requirement. And then we don't really have a credit cap for freshman students. It's more so for transfer students. So those are good questions to ask. Typically, you're going to have to actually request the actual college transcript. So I mentioned that your dual enrollment classes might be on your high school transcript, but when you're talking about actually getting credit awarded, colleges need to see the other institution's transcript. So at that point, once you've enrolled, you would need to request your transcript from the community college or the other four-year institution. And it's also important to note that the college that you're going to be attending needs to offer equivalent courses. So colleges can't award credit for classes that they don't offer. So the random example that I always use for Stevenson is we can't grant credit for electrical engineering courses because we don't offer those courses at Stevenson. We offer a different type of engineering, but not electrical engineering specifically. So that's what I mean by that. They have to have an equivalent course on their campus in order to actually award credit. So I know that was a very brief overview of dual enrollment, but we have a lot to cover. Again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat. We will answer them at the end.
So I will go ahead and take it from there. So I'll talk about AP and IB coursework. So kind of the opposite of what Katie had said in terms of the different classes that are offered for you. You can choose dual enrollment, or you can choose to do these kind of AP and IB, or you can do both. So it's up to you what kind of, like Katie said, works best for you. So the first question here is kind of, what is the benefit of taking AP and IB coursework instead of dual enrollment courses? So the benefit here is that a lot of times those AP classes, they span the entire year. So you have an entire year to learn that subject rather than having to do a semester long class, which would only be from maybe September or August through December. Instead, you have that entire year to take that course and to learn that material. And maybe it gives you a little bit more time, especially if it's like a subject that maybe you're not as strong in, but you want to still take that class. It gives you that full year to do it. The other benefit that goes along with that, and this is especially the case with IB classes, is if you're going for that IB diploma, then a lot of times those classes work together in a cohesive curriculum. So the idea is that you're taking classes from all these different subjects that kind of work together to then give you a finished product, which comes through in that diploma. So that's the kind of benefit of choosing these advanced classes that you take in class instead of the dual enrollment ones. The other benefit is, like Katie said, maybe you have to drive to your community college or local school that you're going to if classes were actually in person right now. So the nice thing about AP and IB is those are going to be typically offered in-house at your high school that you're going to. The other benefit that goes along with this is how AP and IB classes are factored into the academic admissions decision. And the reason for that is because almost always AP and IB classes will be factored into your weighted GPA. So some colleges and universities might not factor that dual enrollment credit, especially if it's not factored in already by your high school, but AB and IB classes go into that weighted GPA. So the way that, for example, Towson does it, and this is what most colleges and universities do, is that if you get, let's say you get a B in a standard class, that's considered a 3.0. But if you get a B in an AP class, it's considered a 4.0 because we add an extra point of weight. So what that does is boost your GPA. So you could end up with a GPA above a 4.0 because you've taken these advanced AP and IB classes. And that is not only helpful for admission and showing us that you've taken these rigorous courses, but it also typically makes you more competitive for scholarships as well because your GPA is weighted and it's stronger in that way. So that's where that's really helpful to consider taking those advanced classes. That goes for also honors, and if you have any gifted and talented classes offered at your high school, really getting that weighted GPA can make a big difference, especially for those scholarships. Also, another question that we often get is, especially for if you're looking at the AP Capstone project or if you're looking at the IB certificate or IB career program. So the question is, do we award credit for those essentially? Most of the time, colleges are not awarding credit for these particular programs, but I would still highly recommend including them in your application. So maybe on your resume, you'll talk about like the IB career program that you did and the research on the ethical situation that you had to consider when you wrote that research project. Or maybe you did volunteer service as part of your capstone program for the AP. Including those things on your resume is a really great way to show us that you have this special knowledge, that you have done this research project, you've considered the ethics of this subject, or you've taken classes in your field that you're interested in going into in college. So really highlighting the things that you've done through these programs in your resume can be a great way to showcase that, even if we're not giving you credit for it at the end of the day. I also recommend, especially if you've done one of those research projects that spans like the entire IB diploma, is maybe talk about that in your essay. If you have an open topic essay, that could be a great place to show what you've spent an entire year or more working on and showing what you've learned. Now, if you're going to include that type of thing in your essay though, just make sure that at the end of the day, your essay still talks about who you are as a person, because that's what we're ultimately looking for when we're reviewing your application, is picturing you on our campus and who you are as a person, not just this research project that you did. So just know that you need to tie both of those pieces in if you decide to go that route. Then the last thing here is, how is credit awarded? So I will also mention, typically in admissions, what we're looking at is the grades that you've received for AP and IB, not the scores for admissions purposes. So before you've gotten scores, we're just looking at grades. But then if you're admitted to our colleges and choose to attend our colleges, then over the summer, you'll send us your official transcripts from IB or AP. And then we each have someone in our office who then processes those scores and awards credit. You also will want to make sure that you're checking with your colleges to see what scores they require. You'll see a lot of times for AP, colleges are requiring scores of 4s and 5s. Some of the times they will accept scores of 3s, but you really need to check. Most of them actually have a whole list of course equivalencies and scores that they require. So just finding that out early and making sure you're checking with each individual school. I'm sure if you've gone to several panels already, you're finding that a theme is it depends. The answer always depends on the colleges that you're applying to. So that's what we're here for as admissions counselors, is to counsel you through this process and answer those questions and make sure that you are set and ready to go through the process. So I will go ahead, I skipped a slide, and I will pass this on to Joy and Susie to talk about the benefits of AP, IB, and dual enrollment.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. So the first two of these, I think, can be tied together, because the biggest one is you can graduate early. Who doesn't like that idea? My son transferred in 15 credit hours when he went to college, and so there's a real possibility, he's a sophomore now, that he could graduate a semester early. And what parent wouldn't want to save some money by the child not going longer to college? So, you know, I think that to me is huge benefit. But that also means you could have more time for internships or extracurricular activities. Maybe you want to be in a play. Maybe you want to do dodgeball intramurals. This 15 credit hours that he has is kind of giving him a cushion, so he doesn't have to max out or take a full load, the maximum amount of credit hours each semester. So the flip side of that is, maybe he wants to double major. Maybe you want to double major. You now, again, have this cushion of credit hours. You could take another major. You could add minors. You could have 1 minor or 2, maybe even 3, depending on how many hours you're going to transfer in. And to me, the advantage for that is you are really making yourself more marketable. You know, if you're going to graduate school, if you're going for employment right after college, all of this is leading up to make you more successful. And, you know, to me, that is the real benefit of taking an AP or an IB or a dual enrollment classes. And just think of all these additional academic achievements that you've done because you have decided to take an extra AP or an extra IB class or a DE class.
All right. So thanks, Joy. I'm going to talk about these last couple of points here. The first one about major exploration, that is a fun one because let's use, for example, psychology as an example. This is a great example because Intro to Psychology is a general class, highly transferable. If you take it as a dual enrollment course, most schools have Intro to Psychology, for example. Let's say you're thinking of being a psychology major, and in high school, you have the chance to do a dual enrollment psychology class or even AP psychology. And you take the class and you say, ooh, I love this. And then you kind of have that to run with when you go to college. Or you take it and you say, I don't know. I don't know if I like this. So it can give you a little bit of an insight of what it's going to be like, what that subject is going to be like in college. It also is going to free up your schedule. Joy talked a little bit about graduating early. It's going to give you a little bit more room to take some elective classes. Maybe there's a subject you always wanted to learn about that you never had a chance to take a class in college. And because you've got some of those credits taken care of before you even start college, it gives you a little bit more room in your schedule to explore and maybe even come up with that double major or a major and minor pairing. One other thing that the taking classes APIB dual enrollment can do for you is really prepare you for the level of college work. So when you are coming out of high school and college, academically, it's very different in terms of the structure of classes sometimes, but an AP class or IB or dual enrollment, that's going to give you, an AP class is going to be much more similar. And then of course, a dual enrollment class is a college class, more or less, especially if you are taking it in that college setting. And you will get that experience of kind of knowing what to expect, preparing yourself for, okay, what does a college syllabus look like? What does that mean? You know, what does the structure of the class look like? What are the expectations for when I get my assignments done? How much reading is typically involved in a college class if you're taking, say, a college history class? Or how intensive is a college level biology lab, that sort of thing, or an AP biology lab? And so it'll teach you those skills that you need and give you that foundation to be prepared for taking on that college level academic work. As far as some other benefits that go into it, honors college and other courses wise, a lot of different institutions will have an honors program, whether a formal honors college or an honors program in itself. And I know, at least in Western's case, the Honors College, when they're considering students for admission, they will actually look at your weighted GPA. So going back to what Melissa was saying about considering the weighted GPA in admission, sometimes that is also a factor with programs like that. It's also going to give you a foundation for some of those standards in honors colleges where you're expected to maintain a certain GPA. If you've got that strong foundation through AP, IB, and dual enrollment, you have that built up before you start a program like that, where there are expectations for maintaining, for example, 3.0 or 3.5 or something like that. So having that extra rigor, so those last two kind of go together a little bit. Having the extra rigor in your schedule in high school is going to have those benefits as well, as far as just that extra preparation for both what college is like and the level of work and the amount of work that you'll be expected to do each week, and the type of feedback that you can expect to get as well from your professors in a class. You know, the type of standards that there are for writing, or for the amount of detail that you put into an exam answer or something like that. So it's all great preparation for the level of college work to take these classes. And we do look at all of that in your admissions decision too, and honors colleges, scholarship committees are all looking at, it depends on the institution, but in general, I know speaking for Western Scholarship Committee and our honors college do look at that weighted GPA as well.
Perfect. All right. So if you don't know whether you will attend an in-state or an out-of-state college, and you're worried that if you go out of state, they may not accept your dual enrollment, should you lean more towards AP? Great question, Megan.
I can answer that. So we're not really looking at where you're taking the dual enrollment classes. That's whether it's in-state or out-of-state isn't a huge factor. As long as you're attending an accredited community college or accredited four-year institution, which I don't think a high school would set up a dual enrollment partnership program with an unaccredited institution. You know, we'll take your credits. You know, we're a Maryland school, so we take credits from students from Virginia. So in-state, out-of-state, that's not really a factor for colleges. Again, we're looking mostly at the grade you're getting and is it an equivalent class. There are lots of other reasons to pick AP or IB over dual enrollment, but looking at in-state, out-of-state, that's not a concern for schools. That's a great question.
Great. All right. Don't be shy. Now feel free to type us another question. I do have one. If I scored a 1 on the AP exam, do I still need to submit that score to the colleges where I've applied?
Go ahead and answer that one. So I will say if you had only one AP class and you didn't get a score, if you got a score of 1 or anything lower than what the colleges are requiring to award credit, you're not, at least at Towson, and from my understanding at most colleges and universities, you're not required to send those scores ever. Like I said, we used your grades that you had in the class for admission purposes, not the scores. So the score won't matter if you don't want to send it, that's fine. You also aren't required to keep your AP scores on your transcript, even at least at Towson when you send those. If you decide you want to take them off the transcript because maybe you need more credits to be able to maneuver things or something like that, we work with you because we know that those are classes that you took and you chose to send into the university.
Great. Are CAS hours important?
I think if maybe write out what CAS stands for. I'm sorry, I don't know what that one is.
All right, let's go to the next one. While Dina is typing out what CAS stands for, if you apply to a college, will they only look at an unweighted GPA right off the bat, or will they look at the weighted GPA as soon as they look at you as a potential applicant?
I can answer this. I mean, you'll hear again, it depends on the school. But I know at Western, we look at both when we are making an admissions decision, just because we see, okay, what is the academic record without, regardless of the types of classes that you've taken, how did you do in your classes, regardless of the weight of it. And then we look at the record over time where we're seeing, okay, what kind of challenging classes did they take? What kind of challenging classes were offered at your high school, that you were able to take, and how does that show up in your GPA? We want to, if you've done that hard work of taking these challenging classes, we want to be able to pay attention to that in our admissions decision as well and recognize that. And again, as we had mentioned, when it comes to things like honors programs and scholarships too, that gets taken into consideration as well. It'll, again, depending on the school, I can't speak for every single institution, but I know for us, that is the weighted GPA is definitely something that we'll take into consideration. We look at both.
Yeah, and I was just going to add one thing. It's always good to ask schools. A lot of schools will do a practice of what is essentially referred to as recalculating a GPA, which means they look at whatever's on your transcript. So weighted, unweighted. If it's on the transcript, your colleges see it and are looking at it as part of it. But a lot of schools, what recalculating a GPA means is they essentially, for most schools that do this, we take out your elective courses so we essentially will then look at 3 GPAs, unweighted, weighted, those are listed on your transcript. And then we will look at just your core academic courses. And that's typically English, math, science, social sciences, language, and then any kind of AP, IB, dual enrollment that don't fall into those categories. So again, really just taking out your electives, like your, not advanced art classes, PE, things like that. And then most schools will, again, they'll use all 3, weighted, unweighted, and recalculated. But again, it's important to ask schools that, and schools will share with you. They don't share exactly, this is the 10 factors we're looking for, because they're usually not just 10 factors, but they will tell you if you ask, what's the most important thing in terms of GPA or what you're looking at. Ask schools.
So back to the CAS Hours, important creativity, activity, and service with the IB program. Are those important?
Yeah, so with those, I think what you're going to find is most U.S. colleges and universities are not requiring the CAS program that you've done. But kind of like I was saying with when you go through the IB diploma and you take like capstone or for AP or something like that, you should still really highlight those experiences in the resume piece, because we want to see that you are doing service learning, and we want to see the kind of actions that you're taking in your community. And if you're working on creative projects like art projects or things like that, those are still really great to highlight in the resume to kind of give us an extra piece, like a supplemental piece to take into consideration in our holistic review of your application. That being said, if you're applying to colleges outside of the US, which you can do with an IB program a lot of times, now they might answer that differently. They might be looking at that as a huge part of their admissions. So again, it goes to that depends situation where you want to contact the admissions counselor for your school. But for US colleges, I would say find a way to highlight it in your application, but to know that it's not something that we're requiring.
Great, thanks. All right, here's another one. Many students will not take dual enrollment because they do not want it to have an impact on their 4.0 GPA. Is there advice as admissions counselors? What is the best way to encourage them to take those DE classes?
I can jump in since that was my slide. So I think that's referring to they're afraid they won't necessarily get an A in the dual enrollment class, so it's going to mess up the 4.0. I said colleges are looking for rigor, and we like to see that you're challenging yourself, and that's important to schools because we want to make sure you can do the work. And there's really not much else that shows that you're ready for college level work than actually taking a college level class. And you're not always going to get an A in every single class. And not every college is looking for only 4.0 students. Like we can all share our average GPAs. Our average GPA is a 3.5. So our applicant pool is not only 4.0 students. And we take that into consideration that if you're taking a really heavy course load, you may not always be able to get that 4.0, and that everybody's different. You're going to have your own strengths and weaknesses. When I was in high school, a much more English, social science based students. I was not always getting A's or even taking advanced level coursework in science and math. So colleges know that. We know that not everyone's going to be able to be perfect in every single thing. So challenge yourself. That's what colleges really like to see, because we want to make sure that you're ready to be in our classroom, and dual enrollment really, really shows that because it's actually college level work.
I do want to add one quick thing really in addition to that, because I wasn't sure if also you meant like your 4.0 in college, like you start out as a freshman with like a clean slate 4.0. So transfer credits that come into the university don't affect your GPA at college. So if you take a dual enrollment class, and even if you got like a C, if you want credit for it, we'll give you credit for it, but it won't affect your college GPA. So you're still starting out with a clean slate coming in as a freshman. So I just wanted to add that in case that's also what you meant too.
Great. All right. So if you got a 1 on your AP exam and don't want to show your school, do you have to pay so they don't see it?
No, so you definitely don't need to pay us for any reason like that where we won't look at your scores, and you also don't have to pay to send it. So I think we had said you don't have to send scores that you don't want colleges to see. That's fine. Definitely don't send stuff you don't want us to, in terms of AP scores anyway.
But they still would have to pay to take the AP. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So if I'm not going to major in a certain subject, but I took a DE class in high school in that subject, would it still be important to add? I
think I saw that as well. I think that means like, is it still going to help me? That's what I'm assuming. Please correct us in the chat. And it can, because as Susie mentioned, it could come in as a general elective course. And there's essentially two ways that any of these things coming in will help you. One is the classes actually count and take away a specific class you don't have to take. So as the psychology example, you wouldn't have to take Psych 101. But there's also a certain number of credit hours that most institutions require you to have. Typically, most colleges require you to graduate with 120 credit hours. So let's say, the psychology example, I'll try to pick up something like very specific. Let's say you take a calculus class, something I never did in high school or college, and you end up being an English major. You don't really need that calculus class, but you're still going to get 3 or 4 credits, which ultimately help you get to the final goal of 120 credits that most colleges have. So again, even if it doesn't take away a course that you need to take, you still get credit hours, which helps you in the long run. So anytime you can bring any kind of credit in, it is going to benefit you. Again, it may not specifically help your major, but it will help you in the long run with credit hours.
I do have one quick thing I want to add to that too. A lot of schools, to kind of thinking about, counting towards something, a lot of schools have things called general studies requirements, liberal studies requirements is what we call them at Western, area studies, where you've got to take a social science. So that psychology class, even if you're not a psychology major, is going to count toward that. You might have some kind of quantitative class that you have to take, like a math class. You might have some kind of history class or something like that. So they may have certain area requirements that you have to cover, even if it's not your major. So think about that too. A lot of those general classes that you can take at the community college as a dual enrolled student are going to count toward something like that as well.
Great. So maybe talk a little bit about the process of sending your transcript from both high school, and do you send it, the student? Does your guidance counselor send it? Does the community college send it? If y'all maybe want to talk about that.
So the first thing to do is check with your high school and look to see, are my dual enrollment classes on my high school transcript? So if you can get onto Naviance, Family Connections, maybe Maya Learning, whatever program your school is using, or ask them for an unofficial copy, look to see, are my dual enrollment classes listed on my transcript, and is it clear that that's a dual enrollment class? In terms of the application process, if it's listed and it's clear that it's dual enrollment on your high school transcript, in terms of the application process, we're going to know those dual enrollment classes. So at that point, you wouldn't need to send that community college or college transcript as part of the application process. But if you decide to enroll at that school, then you will need to specifically request your community college transcript or the other institution. I would say most high schools probably have that set up, where if you want the transcript from the college that you're getting the credit, you have to go to the college to get that information sent. That's usually the best practice. So first thing to do is check with your high school to see how it's listed on your transcript. If it's not listed on your transcript, then you would, as part of the application, need to make sure the college sees the other institution's transcript, even if you're taking the class currently. So it's helpful to see your senior year courses if you're a current senior, and see that you're taking the class now and that you will earn that grade later. So again, that's the first place to check, is with your school counselor.
Great. And maybe along those same lines, I've committed to come to your college. What is the process, and who will I work with to get what classes, so I'm not double dipping? And maybe somebody could address that.
Yeah, sure. I can start off. And as far as that process goes, so all of us here this evening, we're admissions counselors. So we're helping you get started. So we're helping you through the initial enrollment process of getting your application done, making your admissions decision, and telling you what the next steps are as far as things like new student orientation. But in most cases at schools, you will have someone called an academic advisor who's there from the start to help you with your classes and helping you figure all of that out. And different schools have different processes. I know at Western, we have a form that you fill out in the spring before you start. And that actually will match you up with an advisor based on the major that you're interested in and the types of classes that you want to take. It'll help them build your schedule, and you'll actually sit down with them and go through your first semester schedule. So every school has a different process, but typically you'll have an academic advisor there from the start to help walk you through all this stuff, because it's a lot of new information registering for classes. Every school also has something called a registrar's office, which is also the office you'll request your college transcript from if you're dual enrolled from your community college. So the registrar's office and the advising office. Those are two kind of terms to kind of keep in the back of your mind when you're getting closer to that enrollment and starting college. I don't know if anyone had anything they wanted to add in terms of how your schools do the advising process or anything like that.
Ours are exactly the same. Oh,
yeah, I was just
sorry.
gonna say with timing, sorry. Yeah, we're probably all the same, just different terms for everything. But timing, typically, I would say most colleges now, like early in the summer, spring, you sometimes will get in contact. Obviously this year, I think for all of our schools was a little bit different, but like at Stevenson, typically June is when you actually get your college courses. And I think most schools do it in the summer. So even though your classes don't really start until late in August or September, you usually end up getting your courses in the summer, which is exciting because you can kind of graduate high school and really start the transition and get excited for college. So it is something that starts a little bit earlier than probably what most students expect in terms of when you actually start picking your fall classes.
Great. All right. Are there specific tests to take before entering a college to see what classes you will enter? I'm going to start. We do have placement tests. If you have had maybe, let's say, 3 years of Spanish, we do have a requirement for Spanish, for a foreign language requirement of 2 semesters at least, and maybe you can place out of one of those. So yes, that's a great question. We even have a test that we send before orientation to see what level math you should be placed in. So anybody else want to talk about that?
I think it's basically the same for us too. You know, you might have to take like a language, like you said, a foreign language exam. There might be a math placement exam. There could even be one for English or like a reading exam just to see. But a lot of times you'll test out of those things too based on SAT scores or AP scores or IB scores, depending on whatever it is that we have. We typically have certain exceptions that will waive those requirements for you, but we'll let you know. You know, you'll get an email that says, okay, now it's time for you to take this math placement test. And if you get that email, yes, you have to do it. If you don't get that email, then maybe it's not a requirement that you have. But that's why it's super important to check your email from now until forever, basically. Check your email once a day, every day, just to make sure you're not missing things. One thing I say always is it might be some email that you don't care about, but it could be about a scholarship that you should apply for, or maybe I need more information about your application and I cannot make a decision until I receive a response from you. And if you don't respond for 2 months, you're not getting an admissions letter for 2 months. So that's why it's super, super important to start creating that habit now and make sure that you're answering your emails. And then the other thing I usually mention about this too is if you're getting emails from a lot of schools that you don't care about, go ahead and unsubscribe for them so that you don't have a million emails. You only have a few from the schools you truly care about, and it's easier to sift through all of that.
All right, here's a great one. Because of COVID, do all schools still require SAT scores? So we are waiving ours this year because of COVID. Anyone else?
We are as well. And it's important. I have heard even recently some schools changing their policies. So please keep checking with schools and asking them because I know it's still ongoing. And please know that we're all aware. We're all, you know, schools are experiencing this as well. So we know when tests are canceled. We know in certain areas you're not even getting test centers scheduled. Like, you know, it's not even coming online. It's not a cancellation. They're just not being offered in your location. So we are aware of that. So, you know, just to keep that in mind. But yeah, we are test optional as well this year.
All right. Should I use a school or personal email when asking colleges questions? And I'm going to say use the same email that you use on your application. You've got to be consistent for sure.
Yeah, check with your school. So this doesn't necessarily apply because this is a Virginia program, but Melissa and I work with Montgomery County, Maryland, which is a great example where their high school email is for internal use only. It is not for external emails. So no one can email that email address. So check with your school if your email actually is for internal only or can be used externally. That's super important. Some schools you can use email anyone, some schools you can't. And then also make sure that once you've decided to enroll at a school, and it is getting into the summer and late spring, that you change to a personal email, because most schools will turn off your school email once you're an alum of that institution. Most high schools do that. Colleges will typically let you keep your college email address forever usually, but a lot of high schools will turn your high school email off once you've graduated. So once you've graduated from high school and you've decided, you know, the school you're going to, you would just need to let that school know another Gmail or Yahoo or whatever you're using. But yeah, keep it consistent. That's the big thing. But if you are relying on school email, make sure you check with your school to see, is this something that is external use?
So I think we are just about out of time. So I put up our contact information here. Take a quick screenshot so you can get it. But we really appreciate everyone coming. If you still have questions, our emails are here. Reach out to us 10 minutes from now. That's fine. But thanks for coming, everyone, tonight. We hope you have a great evening.
Thanks.
All right. Whoops, that is not the screen I wanted to share. All so much for coming. There will be a quick survey when you close out. And like I said at the beginning, all of these will be available at strivesagain.com/Virginia. And in about a week, you'll be able to find everything that you saw here tonight on there. So thank you all for coming, and thank you to our panelists.